All right, well, let's get another question here, Jim. This one was sent via the Cult of Cornette Facebook group by Alfred Persard Jr.
What now? What?
Hope I got that right, Alfred.
Alfred what? Alfred Buzzard?
Alfred Parsard Jr.
Parsard? So somebody thought that name was a name you should use twice.
Well, will you leave him alone? What is your problem?
Well, it's ridiculous.
And his dad. Why don't you leave him alone, too?
Well, his dad's the one that started the whole thing.
Well, here's Alfred's question. Has Jim ever worked with Al Perez? Also, did he think Al had star potential? And if so, why didn't he achieve bigger things in the business?
Oh, boy. Yes, I did. Remember, Al Perez was in... well, he worked for... It was Crockett, right? Still. Right before Dusty was booking.
It was 88?
Perez was there. It was 88. It was right before TBS bought the company. Did he make it till after the TBS purchase, or was he already gone by then? I can't remember.
He was with Gary Hart as his manager.
Gary Hart was his manager. He was a really good-looking guy. He had a good body, and he could work, and he could talk a bit. It's just that, you know, nothing was outstanding I mean, they used him on top in Texas and in a regional territory, Florida in the day, he could have got over. But he wasn't of the level of Flair or the Horseman or the top guys in Crockett Promotions at the time. He had a good body and he looked good. Gary Hart is his manager as a heel. He could be kind of a narcissistic Lex Luger type, but I just don't think there was anything about his promos or his matches or, you know, whatever that really stood out, except that he was completely convinced that he was and should be the greatest wrestler in the world and the world heavyweight champion.
Is the Ric Flair story true?
I'm trying to remember didn't he?
Heck, he refused the job to Ric Flair. He said, you have to really beat me?
Well, I couldn't remember whether it was that or whether that he quit or stood him up at one point over, he thought they should put the belt on him. That may have been the bone of contention of why that he left. I can't remember. Either he said, well, if you don't put the belt on me, I'm leaving. Or they said, well, what the fuck? Shut the fuck up and just go away. But yeah, he thought and Flair, you know, was willing to work with anybody. But my God, it just, you know, when you got this guy that Al Perez on a national basis didn't really ever do anything and for anybody. He didn't trip anybody's trigger, but he was convinced that he was, you know, the best in the world. And I think that's what prevented him from going any further, because he was so convinced that he should be farther ahead than what he was.
And it seemed like for a while he was on a trajectory to go somewhere, because he was in 85, him and Wendell Cooley were tag champions in Mid-South, getting over as a young baby face.
Yeah.
Although tough position post Rock and Roll Express, but they did as good as you could in the summer of 85.
But it showed people wanted to do stuff with him because he looked good and he had potential and he, you know, was athletic and had the physique, but the attitude was not... he was convinced that he was the biggest star in the business.
And then in 87 or so, I think, 87, he's in World Class with Gary Hart. And that's right before he gets to the NWA, and he's with Gary Hart. And then Gary goes to Muda, I guess, right after he leaves.
And that was a trade-up because instantly Muda got over. So, and I'm not saying, you know, it was because of Gary, but you got a guy with Gary Hart as his manager and he don't get over worth shit. And then suddenly you got a guy with Gary Hart as his manager and everybody's over. What's the change in the fucking, you know, equation?